It's my great privilege to ask for the main speaker. Roger, you're up, sir.
Thank you.
That's your time.
Okay. Hi, folks. My name is Roger, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm a member of the High and Dry group here in Las Vegas, and my sobriety date is April 15th, 1965. I went to my first AA meeting. It was in 1963, and it was a VA mental hospital in Brockton, Massachusetts. And and at that time, I had already captured a couple of times, sent to a state mental hospital. But I'll tell you a little bit about all these other things that have taken place with me. But more recently, I had some cancer taken off my face, so I told I could have a video film of this, but my eagle was so big I couldn't have one, you know. So I said, no, I don't have one of those. But anyway, I began the early years of 1960s. 63 was the first time I went to VA. Now, while I was in this VA hospital, they sent me to one of the the nurses wasn't suggested that I go to an AA meeting that night, and I said, why would I want to go to an AA meeting? And he said, well, you go in there and you get a cup of coffee and probably a donut, and you might hear a funny story. And I said, well, okay. So I'm in a nut house, you know what I mean? I can, there's a lot of choices to do. So anyway, I went there, and I thought, this is ridiculous. These people are in the Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm two young men, you know. And they said, oh, and this was in 1963. But that's just the beginning time that I went to my first AA meeting. But I want to back up just a little bit because I lived up I was born in 1935, and my family, my mom and dad, they were great people. And I had 5 other brothers and 2 sisters. We had a beautiful family. And past went on, 2 of my brothers were in World War II, and my other brother was in Korea. Another Marine was in the Marines. And I was in the paratroopers. And so we all, and one brother couldn't go because he had bad ears. But anyway, we had a pretty good family. I mean, really beautiful people. And they all, after 1945, I was 10 years old. My father died. He was only 52. And my mother kept the family together. And she never drank and never smoked. She was a wonderful, beautiful person. And everybody seemed to be having a great, good family. Now, when I going to school, I was, fair student, but when I got about 15 years old. I think I was probably 14. I can't remember the first drink I had. And but I know at the time I was 15 years old, that's something happened to me. I didn't care about anybody or anything else. And I'm going to do whatever the hell I do, whether everybody likes it or not. So I ended up, having trouble with police. They didn't like a guy like me that causes trouble. And I used to get into a little trouble here and there. I won't go all the details, but one judge said, now listen, pal, you're going to go to jail or you're going to go in the military. And I thought, well, all my family's been practically in the military, so I became in the Army. I ended up joining the paratroopers, and I thought we were pretty tough guys. And where I grew up in Boston, we lived in the projects and had a lot of trouble, and we always thought we were pretty tough guys. But anyway, I got in so much trouble in there that they would put my stripes on, and then maybe 2 months later, the stripes gone. And then maybe 2 or 3 months later, I get another one. I get the stripe back on, and then 2 or 3 weeks, they're gone again too. And finally, I was lucky to get out with an honorable discharge, and I was a private by the time I got out. And then when I got home, now I'm 21 years old, and I'm not going to do any of the bad things that I had done. I'm going to, like my older brothers and other people, I'm going to be an honest, straight-eyed guy. And I tried to do that, and I met this beautiful Irish girl from Boston, and we got married. And within, it may have been maybe 9 and 10, no, maybe about 10 months, she had a baby, after our first marriage. And then we had Irish twins, another year. We took kids. Let's say we got 2 little kids within 2 years. And, I think that's really pretty good. I like to get the scars going on. We have parties and all this stuff. But every once in a while, I'd get in jail locked up again. And they said, what the hell's he doing in locked? What's he doing that for? And what are my brother? Now my brothers go look for me, and then now these drunks starting to get on. And then I got a job in sales, traveling New England, and I had a pretty decent job. But then all of a sudden, I'm away I'd leave in the morning, and I'd back home on Friday night. So I'd get on the customers, I'd meet them Monday and get going. Now I got a little late up to meet my other, and next thing I know, I'm drunk again the next day. I mean, I got customers go see, what am I doing drunk again? And this started for how many years. I really tried to get my act together. And then I remember my wife used to call me when I'd be gone from Boston. I had to go to the western part of Massachusetts. And she says, okay, from now on, I'm going to call you every night. And this is, it was a big deal. To on the phone and call her and say, listen, you go, have no more customers now. So you sit down and have dinner and get into the hotel room. And so you're not drinking. Now, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. And I'd call and I'd really be a good guy about this. And then, so I'm going 4 days and I did well selling that week. And this is just one time. but many other times like this happened. But it was a Friday night. I'm on my way home. And when I'm getting in we had this little home tree about 20 miles out of Boston. and I pull in and I said, well, now it's Friday night. And I was a fight fan. And so I told them, oh, Friday night, I'll get a little, I know I always had a little beer at home, and I'll stop at the little town we have. I'll get my gasoline filled up. I'll go into this little place and get a pizza to bring home. And the kids will see me then, and the wife. So I go in to get the pizza. So while I'm in there, I'm thinking, oh, what the hell? I'm only half a mile away from the house. I'll just have a beer while I'm here, and then when I go home. And I bought a bottle of beer, and I'm sitting in the bar waiting for the pizza to come up. And this guy pulls along, hey, Joe, how are you? Joe, hey, bartender, have another beer. Oh, yeah, try another one. Oh, another one. And the next thing you know, the bartender, I said, Harry, he says, here's your pizza. I said, listen, keep it warm, because now I've already had about 3 bottles of beer or something like that. And you know, that was a Friday. I never want to forget this. I woke up on Monday, some other place. I know where the hell I was. And this is from Friday to Monday morning. And hey, I got a family, I got a beautiful family. What the hell what am I doing that again? How could I do that? You know, now I'm questioning, what's the matter with me? Because I get in trouble again now. And now I'm whatever, maybe just a weekend I might, I remember my brothers all boats and would go fishing and every once in a while, they would get so tired of me, because I'd slip in a pint of Old Thompson with me, and everybody's just having a beer with them on the truck. And the next thing you know, I'm hopping the bag in the car, and then I'm a pain in the ass to be around. So they take me, we're like 3 miles in the ocean, and they drive me back into the nearest dock that they can do and throw me off the dock, because I'm driving them crazy with it. And so the next thing I know, I'm in trouble again. I end up in jail again. And I don't understand why this is happening to me. And then I believe it's the boss, for one thing, and the cops, they like to fight too. And I don't know why I'm into these troubles all again. And finally, my wife says, you have to go. We were strong Catholics, and we live in a little town, and we get this little church that we go to all the time, and brings me to see the doctor, to the priest. And I go in to tell him what's going on with me. I said, my wife said, you got to go down and see him, talk to him about that priest. I went down and I saw him, and I said, what's going on? So I tell him, now this guy, he's just brand new into this. He just got into this. He's a young man, you know, and he got a light one in his life for the term that's he never heard of anything like me at all. And we're trying to what I went through. And he'd say, okay, now you got to do this and that and that. Okay, fine. And then I'm really going, and this is good now. And the next thing I know, my wife says, you got to go see that priest again. It's only 2 weeks away. And because I'd been drunk again for a long time. And when I drink up, I'd be gone. I mean, my brothers used to go looking for my car, or my car would be lost or whatever. And then I'm back in the car with the police or something. And so now I go back to the priest. And he listened to me after a time. And he says, listen, I can't do any more for you. He says, you need some help. You got to go see a psychiatrist. I said, psychiatrist? I don't need a psychiatrist, right? He says, you got to go see a psychiatrist because you're not acting right. You don't do the right things and all this. So I said, now I got a wife to deal with. So I said, okay. So we call to see this psychiatrist in Boston, which is like 20 miles away from us. So we drop in to sit with him because when I get on these drunks afterwards, I would be so low and so depressed. I'm crazy, you know? And I love these beautiful kids I have, but it was awful. So anyway, we went to Boston to see the doctor. The doctor, he gets in, he sits down with my wife and I, and they tell him what's going on. I don't think I was with him for more than 20 minutes, a half hour. And we says, oh, we got something for you. Oh, good, yeah, good, we'll straighten this out. And they bring us in this other room, close the room. Next thing you know, they laying me down, and they strapped me down. I said, what are you strapping me for? Well, you're going to have a little, what we call, little electric shock treatment. Now, this is in 1960. How old is I? In my mid-20s or something. And he says, this will straighten you out. I straightened me out. Wow. I got zapped with this thing the first time, and I would have to be for like 3 times a week they'd have to have this done. And now I'm out of it, you know. And the next day I could drive, and we were doing this for about, every 3 times a week. And after this, I don't like these things at all. You know what I'm saying? Please, if you don't mind, but on the way into the church, into the hospital, we get in there, and I'll never forget this, because I pulled up into a drugstore, and I said to my wife, honey, will you get me a pack of cigarettes for me while they go in the drugstore? So she goes in there, and she goes to the drugstore. I take off. I take off with that car because I'm heading for the not Ashua, but where's my interpreter there? In Florida. I was going to Australia. I want to go to Australia. I'm getting the hell out of here. Why don't anybody do this to me anymore? And now if I end up down in detective in Connecticut, end up there, and shot the police, and obviously I'm drinking again, and the cops get me again from Connecticut, and they throw me up, and where they bring me back to Massachusetts, and I end up in a rubber room for them about a week, and then they ship me from a state mental hospital, and that was the beginning. God bless those people that tried to help, but I just thought I had I didn't have a drinking problem. I'd just get mixed up once in a while, or I'd get angry too often, and I was in there for how long, 2 or 3 weeks or whatever. Now they shipped me from there to the VA hospital. Now, by this time, you have had Thorazine. Anybody had Thorazine? Jesus, unbelievable. Because I can't fight anymore, and I can't do anything. I'm completely a zombie, you know. And because I was trying to get along with something, I think, and then this hospital I went, and we had enormous place in Brockton, Massachusetts. It had at least 12 buildings of hospital in all this big place. And when I first there, I'm up on the fifth room, and there's no there's no lock door on the thing for me. I'm locked up. And I'm trying to get along with this and get along with her. So they get me on different medications. I don't know how many different ones they put me on. But now when you move down to the second floor, you'll be having a little more time. You know, you might put you out in the grass. You could go around the grass and everything you could be around. And then if you're better, you get down to the first floor, and then you really can get around. You can go to the other buildings or wherever else you want to go. And the thing I do is right out the gate, 3 months to Jeff George's Cafe. Yeah, that's the first time I get it. And what do I end up there? I get in trouble with there again. And like I'm 3 blocks away from the hospital, so I said, I'll sneak in and sneak back into the net house, right? Well, I get in and you can't get into some of these buildings, but somehow I got into one of them and get up, and then they have these tunnels that went all over the place, tunnels all over the place. And then when I'm in there, I think I'm an Irish tenor. I can sing a lot of songs, and I'm singing away along the way, and they're hollering back, well, where are you at? I don't know where the hell I am. And they're looking back and forth, and finally they catch me. Whoosh, they threw the net on me up in the 3rd floor. You know, the lap, what do we call it? The flight deck. You're locked up again. And now I'm back to the Thorazine thing again. And because I get a little wild. And I want to tell the whole story of all of this because I'm losing so much time here. But I finally get out of there. And I got to tell you this little story, though. I used to play a little baseball, and so now in this mental hospital, they have softball teams, and they're meeting, and they're going to have other mental teams, mental hospital, come back and play. I said, now I wish I took a movie taking all this stuff, because there's one guy that always in center field, and the fly ball would be always coming right in the middle of him in the center field. He'd be right underneath it, and the ball would come in right off his forehead. Every time. He'd never catch the right one. And I'm looking, and half the people are in Thorazine. Geez, nobody can run. You can hardly walk. It was the craziest thing you ever seen. And anyway, I finally get out of there, and I think it was another 2 years later, they put me back in again because I tried not to drink, but nobody talked about alcoholism. I want to tell you this. At that time, this one psychiatrist said to me, "You're a potential alcoholic." I said, "I'm not an alcoholic. My God, I'm a young man. I'm 26 years old or whatever it was." And he says, "You're a potential alcoholic." And I had no idea what alcoholism is, okay? So I won't go all of the other problems and troubles with family and everybody. They're wondering about this guy. For example, while I'm in the VA hospital again, somebody's getting married in the family, okay? And they said, now in the next job, next town, next to where my wife is living with the other kids, I'm still locked up in this place. And so they said, my wife says, can they take him to the wedding, that we're going to have a good wedding there, and his other brothers will with him, and so he won't drink or do anything, and they'll bring him, and they'll let your wife stay at the party, so he'll take one of my brothers will take him back. And I'll never forget this, because everybody's watching him, watching me, my brothers. And so I say, oh, okay, thanks a lot. And his wife, they drive from Boston into this, going to the Brockton VA hospital. And just as we're going by, I said, listen, right next town, we're going right by the town. My house, and I left something in my house. I'd love to be able to get it out of there. I got a sweater in there I'd really like, because I'm kind of cold lately. And so, anyway, my brother pulls me over to a house, and my brother, I don't know how we had the keys, but I got in the house. And so I go in the house, whoosh, down the cellar, up the back row of the door, out into the woods. Now I got to walk like almost a half hour to get through the woods to get into the road, and I got enough money to get downtown and get some booze. And that's when I do. And my brother's sitting there with his wife waiting for me. What the hell is he doing? How long does it take? And then they realized, wow, he got away. He flew away again. And this kind of crazy stuff I would do. And I ended up in Brockton again, in the crummy bars, and then I get in a fight in there, and then there's police there, and then the police catch me and bring me back to the nut house again, and all the stupid stuff I'm doing. And I can't understand. And now my wife finally says, I'm done. I can't handle it anymore. I can't do it. We're leaving with the kids. I say, wait. And now I'm acting like a normal person. I could be, if I'm not drinking, I could go work and make money, sales, but it would never know what was going to happen. So my wife says, no, don't get yet. Don't go. I tell you what, I'll go to the city where these priests are down there. They're a little different priests. They're not Jesuits. Anyway, they're easy to get along with. You know what I mean? So I went and I talked to him. And I've been with him for 20 minutes. And he says to me, Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, what? He says, Alcoholics Anonymous for you, pal. That's where you need to go. And I said, wait a minute, I'm not an alcoholic, and I really mean this. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I said, I just get a little excited sometimes, and I get in a little trouble with some, but I'm not an alcoholic. And he says, well, that's the only shot you have, pal. He says, so, you want to stay with your wife? I said, and the kids? Yeah, okay. He picks up the phone, he says, hey, yeah. I asked him if he would take him to an AA meeting that night on the phone. No. But the next day, I meet this guy, and he tells me, I'll meet you at the YMCA in Brockton. I meet this guy, and he's a nice looking guy, and I go to the meeting, and to this YMCA, and I go in and hear a meeting. And I'm sitting in there, and I'm saying, what the hell am I doing here for? The people were at least 40 years old and up, a lot of old people. And I'm in my 20s. And I thought, what am I doing with this group? I don't want to have anything to do with this. And the next time, he calls me up, we've got to go to a meeting tonight. Tonight, again? And then we go to another meeting, and then I lost about 2 weeks, and I'm drunk again. And the same guy, he says, Solomon, he says, I'll pick you up and take you to another meeting. I'm telling you, I'm bouncing like this for, 2 or 3 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. I'm up and up. And so he starts working on me, picks me up, takes me anyway, whether I get drunk or not. He says, wow. And he's trying to help him. And he's trying to teach me about alcoholism. Now, I have no idea of what alcoholism is. I really don't. I just know I'm crazy at times, but alcoholic. I'm not an alcoholic. And this guy, I'm taking to meetings, and I must be 6, 7 weeks with him. And finally, I'm listening to some of the guys, and I like what they're saying here. And then all of a sudden, I'm catching on to these guys a little bit. And then I started going in more and more meetings, and I'm getting to meet some of the people and go. But they don't really think they don't know that I'm really the crazy person, you know? I don't want to tell them all about how crazy I can be and so they bring the meetings, and I remember I'm 11 months, I'm not drinking anymore. 11 months. I get into a big fight with my wife, and I remember that on a Saturday afternoon, I call my sponsor. She is driving me crazy, you know. He says, come on over. So he go to my sponsor's house, and we have a long talk and all this. And one of the things he says, when you finish today, I want you to go home and tell your mother, to your wife, to apologize. I said, I'll apologize. What? Yeah, I don't want to apologize. And he said, I want you to go home and apologize. And I said, okay, geez. He said, now I want you to do it on the way. You can go in the chapel and ask God to help you want to make the apology. Pray about it. Wow, this was heavy talk for me. So I did, and I did that, and I said, oh, okay, good, because I'm getting a little bit this business about, knowing about God. So I really meant it, and I went home, and I apologized to her, and I was really happy about that, and the next thing I know, we have a big fight again, 20 minutes. And I said, get the hell out of here. And I remember I got in the car, and all I had was those lightweight pants, and I had like $20 in my pocket. If ever I'm thinking about, I'm drinking, I'm making sure I'm going to have some money around somewhere, or some checks anyway that I can hang wallpower. But this time I didn't, and I went and I was going to buy a new car, and I moved the next business another towns away. So I went to the towns and I looked at the car and it wasn't wanting to do it, and so I'm leaving on my way home, and I said, wait a minute, I'm not going to go home with her. I'm going to do without her. I'm going to go to an AA meeting later. Now, this is 60 years or more ago. We didn't have an AA meetings like you do here. Every time a meeting, they were on the corner, okay? So this was about 20 miles away to another town that Saturday night. And I said, no, I got like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. What am I going to do now for the next 3 or 4 hours? And I'm driving around in circles, and I ended up in this little Weymouth of Massachusetts. And when I walk in and I drive into this place called Bridge Cafe. There was a bridge there. And I remember, and I walked in, I said, oh, I'm never going to do this stuff anyway, so I'm going to go in. And also, now I couldn't imagine I'm going to have a bottle of Schlitz. And I'm sitting in the car and I'm thinking, what happens if I start drinking this? I'm going to fall off the stool or something. I was thinking, this is weird. But anyway, I started drinking again. And do I end up, I get back drinking in the Boston or the tough areas. I'm in there and I'm drunk in there. And what have I got in my hand? I got a literature on my, and I'm going around in the bar and I'm handing some of these guys. I couldn't believe this. Next morning I ended up in South Boston on the beach, and I had a bottle of Old Thomas, and I had a beer and I had some whiskey, and I started drinking up again Sunday morning. Now, by the grace of God, I got home that night, and I can't believe how I got home. And the next morning, I went to an old timer. There was an AA that I was a young man, an older man that I knew he'd be around, and I went to see him to tell him what happened. Now that I have not had a drink or a hell of a drink. I haven't had a drink since that day that I was. Now this old man was from World War One. He was he'd been sober for over 20 years, and he's a beautiful man, and he couldn't stop shaking from World War One. He was also screwed up to that, and I loved him. He was a beautiful man. And so he hooked up with my sponsor again, that everybody knows by now. This guy's a sponsor. You got to get with him till. So he hooked up with him, and these guys here begin carrying me around to understand. And this is the thing that saves. I'm so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous, because the men that were there and the women that I met, and what they were suggesting that I do. And this is what I loved about AA. There was no bosses. Nobody was I remember the guys and say, oh, you wanted a drink tonight? Yeah, I mean, really. You want a drink going today? Well, go ahead. And what are you saying? Well, but you don't want a drink? Oh, well, go drink. And I'm saying, well, what the hell? All you guys are trying not to drink, and you're telling me to go drink if you want? I said, well, if you want to drink, you can drink. Yeah, go ahead. I'll never forget that. Because I couldn't believe that these, if you want to drink, go ahead. Wow. And now I knew that I know now I shouldn't drink. I can't drink. I can't drink, because if I do, I never know what's going to happen. I mean, I came closely, very close. When you're in the military, you know how to handle guns, and you know how to kill people, you know, all crazy. And I remember on a drunk that I was in, about 4 days, and I had already been to the hospitals and nuts and all the hospitals and everything, and I was done with it. If I could kill myself, I'd be good. I was so gone. And I remember I got to go back to where I was. And when the projects right down for a way, there used to be Sweeney's. It was Queenie's, it was named. And I remembered it, and I walked in. There was a cafe, and then on the same building, they had a regular liquor store. And I walked in the liquor store, and the guy's behind the counter, and he says, yeah, what can we do for you? I said, listen, pal, I said, I'm going to tell you right now, you're dying today. You're going to be a dead man today. So you start praying to God now, right now. And the guy said, what's the matter with you? I said, I'm going to kill you. And the reason, and the guy's looking, what do you want to kill me for? I said, listen, you will never drink another kid again. Because I used to buy booze when I was 15 years old from these people in that liquor store. And I said, I'm telling you right now, so say your Lord, say your prayers, because I really meant it. And the guy's looking scared to death. He said, what are you talking about? I just bought this place 2 years ago. And I'll never forget that. As crazy as I was, as the guy clicked to me, and I took my breath away from me. This isn't the same man. And I stopped. And I turned around and I walked out of the place and got in the car. Now, in the meantime, there was another person that I wanted to put in the ground. And I chased, and I was in sober 6 months when I finally lost that angry and that said it. What did you say? Yes, I did. And that didn't happen anymore. So while I'm learning all of this about jobs not working right and the wife and a lot of kids and everything going on, but you can't drink. You can't drink. Even though and getting angry about things. Geez, I remember going in the basement of my floor of the house of cement and kicking the walls and I had this frustrated world in me. And other people that I knew after I was sober, and I knocked people, I hit some people I shouldn't have hit before. And I couldn't believe these things about myself because I was really so crazy. And these two men keeping me into AA and learning, and finally, 3 years, finally I got a decent job. And I was in this job, as a matter of fact, I was on that job for 25 years. And I was in sales. And my wife just signed me a new little thing that showed me, and here's #1 salesman around New England, about 100 guys, and it's me, #1. Another guy, second, third. They were all Irish guys. O'Leary, myself, Murphy, Clancy, and I lasted 25 years. I retired from them. Another thing during that, for new people, every morning, by the way, I ask God to help me to go a day without a drink or a substitute. And then at night, I ask God, thank you again for a beautiful day you gave me. And what is, I run up in 2 minutes, I can't believe it. But you can't imagine what's happened to me in 60 years of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a new baby that she just told 60 years old. 60, and my other 2 daughters are all doing well. And my son is very well. And proud of them all. I am very proud of them. And after 8 years of sobriety, I got divorced with my wife, and I couldn't do it. I was the one that had to stop. Couldn't do it anymore. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wouldn't want to argue anymore. My arguing days are over. I don't want to fight anymore. And so that woman, she never remarried, and she's 90 years old now, 90, and we still have a relationship with our kids all together. But and she's got a little difference, a little anxious thing. She's having problems, but I couldn't possibly make people understand what alcoholism is. I've sponsored a lot of guys and some women. I want to say this too, about 4 guys that I worked with, I sponsored, they committed suicide. 4. Why? Because this is a terrible, terrible disease. And I don't care how long you're in the program. You've got to stay with the program. I've happened so many men and women, after many years in the program, they're away and then they drink again and they're gone. I mean, how come I got it and how so many other people got it, that they were able to keep and stay this beautiful way to live. Any way that I could encourage you to do these basic things that with the 12 steps and have I don't know how you do it without a sponsor. I just really don't. So people want to help one another. And I just never thought I could stay this long. I mean, I thought I had so many things happen. So many men I've been close with that have died that I've sponsored in 40 years and 30 years. So guys that I grew up with in AA together. It's a miracle. Alcoholics Anonymous is an ops. It's definitely is a miracle. It really is. Those two men that started in 1935. What they did, they two men, and they got another man, they got another man, and they got another guy. And next thing you know, we got millions of people all around the world now not drinking. I mean, how could you just decide that, this is a miraculous thing that happened to us? I just love my life and all my families and all my friends. I've loved so many friends I've been with. And the big deal is all we have to do is don't take one drink today. Now, tomorrow, go ahead and get drunk. But today, don't take one. Not today. We're not going to drink today. That was the big deal. One day I will not drink today. And then I'll ask God to help me do that. I better shut this thing off. It's not on, but I've talked too much about it already, I think. And I thank you for what a beautiful home you have here, and what a place you have here. I'll be back to see you again more than once because it's so nice. We would have been sooner and had more food with us the next time because we'll be here earlier. I love you all, pal, and thank you for taking your time.